Okay, so guys, hi. Firstly, thanks for registering and thanks for being here. Today we're going to be talking about ladder and PIPPAMS. This is the second year that Jahan and I are doing this collaboration together, and we're really grateful to have all of you here. Jahan is head of growth at Ladder Internships, and Jahan's going to be introducing herself right now, and then I'll take over. Jahan, why don't you go ahead?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am Jahan, and yes, I am the head of growth here at Ladder Internships. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly is Ladder Internships, what exactly, we're going to discuss a lot of stuff with PIPPAMS here as well. But just a quick little background about me is I studied at NYU. I worked at the New York Times for a bunch of years. And now I am the head of growth here. I am based in India at the moment, but I've, spent a fair share of like 10 years, sorry, living in New York. And happy to sort of, include all of that experience and all of that exposure in our conversation today. But kick it back to you for a little introduction as well.
Thanks, Jahan. I'm Krithvi. I'm head of program and partnerships here at PIPPAMS. And before that, I used to head the research team at SI, a parent company, which is a boutique education consultancy operating out of India, but serving students across the globe. And since the last 1.5 years, I've been working on this EdTech product. We just put a lot of love and labor into it. And we've tried to make it as accessible as possible. We do have a fair share of users, but again, we're just here to kind of bring the conversation back. And yeah, we're excited to get started. So Jahan, maybe I think my first question is going to be to you.
Okay.
What should a why should a high school student do an internship firstly? What are some of the benefits of doing an internship? Because you come from ladder, you bring that expertise in. So could you
Yeah.
just in that?
No, of course. No, great question. Thanks for that, Prithvi. So of course, a lot of you in the room, I'm also seeing the numbers are going up slowly. So some people are catching up as we're starting. A lot of you are likely high school students, students in general, parents of students, and sometimes we're like wondering at such a young age, like, does it even make sense for me to do an internship, or like, should I pursue something, quote unquote, professional outside of the academics? And absolutely, aside, PIPPAMS will obviously all, say this as well. For you as your profile, for you as a person, doing an internship is a really great way to really augment, not only your admissions, not only when you're applying to colleges, but even you as a person, right? What are you interested in? What kind of fields do you think you want to pursue? At the school level, sometimes we're like, oh, we really like the subject, so maybe I want to study that later. But what does it mean to like actually employ that subject in the real world, right? So I always recommend that it's never too early to start with internships. And a program like this at Ladder is actually meant to equip students who are young like yourself, who've maybe never had, internships before, have had very few small shadowing opportunities before. And now here's a chance to really work with a company, really get your hands dirty, as we like to see. And some benefits, Krithvi, you asked me, is of course the overall exposure you're gaining, working with these companies. Plus, you're actually getting, as I'm going back to that quote, getting your hands dirty and actually doing the work. So you have that to show, whether it's in your college apps, whether it's in conversation with somebody, even if just for yourself, you're like, hey, I worked on this. I coded this. I actually think I like this. Or, hey, I actually did this research project with this company. I actually think I want to pursue that. Or sometimes, even more importantly, I really do not like this field that I thought I would like. So, in all those different ways, you really get a taste and a glimpse into learning more about yourself, building your skills. So I think for all those reasons, it's super, super valuable and important to do an internship. But I sort of, kind of dovetailing off of my response, some questions that often come up in my life and, in general from students that I talk to is, and I'm curious to know what you have to say here, Prithvi, is that what do you think are some of the challenges, the top challenges that high school students face when it comes to looking for internships, right? And of course, I know a little bit about PIPPAMS, but I'm sure people in the room would want to know is that how is a portal like PIPPAMS helping these students or helping overcome those kind of challenges for students to gain these accesses to these programs.
Right. So Jahan, firstly, your observation here was really interesting when you said that, why traditional internships are also very much different from the kind of internships high school students should be doing. There's a lot
Yes.
more, there's an element of exploration to it, which is missing
Yeah.
from traditional internships. And that's why I think you have launched Ladder, and that's why we also have a tool to look for different kind of opportunities. And as far as my experience has been with SI and even in the education landscape for all these years, in the traditional
Right.
high school structure, high school students primarily find internships through two ways. Um, One is through networks within their family, and the
Yeah.
other is through schools. Now, while the networks within the family, they can be well intentioned, they might not understand the kind of exploration that the student is looking for, which
Mm.
is when programs like Ladder Internship comes in, where they meet the student at the level that they are. Internships
Right.
are primarily for college students or even undergrads.
Absolutely.
Um, so this is why I think Ladders is kind of bridging that gap, which is really interesting. The second kind of method I spoke about was within the school network. This is really interesting because schools often may build these partnerships with companies and stuff, which are superbly valuable, yes, but they're very limited in number.
Hmm.
That is the issue. So um that's why when students are going to the same school, what they end up doing, there's no diversity in the applications at the end of the day. Everyone's doing the same kind of stuff again and again, which is why a platform like Ladder firstly comes in, and second, a platform like Pippams comes in, which kind of helps you see these diversified options. And they're also known as, by the way, STEP programs on our platform, which is student enrichment programs. We personally don't like to use the word internship because it can seem very work related. This is a way for students to enrich their profile in order to gain an understanding of different career platforms, which is our main aim.
Yeah.
So Jahan, actually, that leads me to my next question to you. Um,
Hmm.
what kind of fields should a high school student consider while wanting to pursue an internship in something? Because this is
Yeah.
in a starting point, right?
Absolutely. No, and a really great question and kind of ties in with when you were answering and sort of, sharing your thoughts there. I really agree with everything that you said. And of course, it is enrichment of your profile, of your being. And as you said, those school partnerships, while fine and good, limited spots, also your network limited, also you're limited by what the options are there in the sense that, let's say tomorrow, oops, I think we might have briefly lost Prithvi, but she will come back. I will keep talking, sort of sharing my thoughts, and we'll see if she comes back. There's a little bit of a weather-related issue there. But basically, just to continue, kind of what Prithvi was saying earlier, what happens is that sometimes your immediate network has only like maybe an opportunity in this particular field, or maybe oh my dad's friend has this one office where I can go and work. But that office, let's say you're a student applying in environmental sciences, and that office has nothing to do with environmental sciences. So yes, maybe you're adding something to your resume, maybe you're adding something to your college apps, maybe. But then when a person's reviewing that, it doesn't really seem aligned, right, with what you're applying for or what you might be interested in. Same too with those school partnerships that your school might have. Great, you should try to take advantage of that. But let's say you want to do medicine and there's nothing in the medical space there. So what do? Are you just going to be working at in a finance space and adding that, that's not really actually benefiting you at the end of the day. So coming to your question of what kind of fields, that's why we have in our program we have a very strong, we stress on, you let us know what you think you are gravitating towards first. Students should absolutely be pursuing an internship, any sort of enrichment projects in areas that they're anyway kind of gravitating towards, things that they think they might be wanting to pursue in the future to study, in the undergrad or even at their master's level, to maybe make a career out of. And it's totally fine for you to be undecided. There might be students in this room, for example, who are very sure that they want to do a pre-med track one day, or they're very sure they want to do law. But there might be others who might be like, I kind of like business. I really don't like science. So I know I want to do something there. Or I really like math, but do I want to work in math? Question mark, question mark. And that's all right. In our process, for example, at Ladder, we have a form, which is our first step, where we ask students questions just like this, where we ask them a little bit like, tell us what kind of areas, as broad and as limited as you'd like to be. Students can select a drop-down menu of multiple different areas that they might want to choose. They can dive deeper into this. And then, of course, we invite them on an interview. So you get some one-on-one time to talk to them as well. And, understand from them like what kind of areas they'd want to pursue in the internship or in any sort of management program. So sort of short answer, to the question would be that the kind of fields that you pursue an internship in is something that we can help you figure out, but it should be something that you are naturally gravitating towards, something that will add to your overall profile and does not need to always be, oh, I only have this available, so I might as well take that. Let's be a little bit thoughtful about where we're spending our time in that sense and our energy and building our profile in that sense. And actually talking about profiles, it's you mentioned at PIPPAMS how you have the option for students to look at these student enrichment programs, etc. But what are some other ways, if you can tell us, about how PIPPAMS helps in shaping the overall sort of, how do you make the student profile well-rounded, and all of the different aspects that a student should be doing now in order to make their profile stand out? Oh, you're mute.
Yeah, thanks, Samudra. So Jahan, that's interesting that you brought up. By the way, can you hear me fine? Bit of weather-related issues here.
Yes, you're back.
Lovely.
We can
Okay.
hear you fine. Perfect.
Oh, lovely. So that's really interesting, Jahan, because when you spoke about gravitating towards a certain subject or towards a certain subject point, I found that interesting because we're not saying that students need to come to us with a pre-decided major or a pre-decided academic discipline.
Right.
But at the same time, we're not saying that, hey, you really hate science, go do it.
Yeah.
Right? We need to be mindful of a student's kind of academic trajectory in that sense, which says that, oh, it's okay if you're undecided, but also what are your interests? What are you
Yeah.
gravitated towards? And
Right.
that's where PIPPAMS kind of comes in because it helps students go beyond the academics in the traditional classroom space, right? So you can have a focused or an unfocused academic pathway and engage with it through cool opportunities such as ladder, research,
Right.
competitions, out of the classroom examinations, Olympiads, etc., etc. So
Yes.
in that way, even though you have some sort of a structure in mind, it can also help you pinpoint to that one area that you're really interested in. And if you're not, that's absolutely fine. You build an interdisciplinary profile.
Yeah.
But what programs such as uh, perhaps Ladder and even PIPPAMS kind of encourages at the end of the day is that you keep doing, right? You keep
Yeah.
exploring and in a non-stressful manner. That's something that I'm going to be coming to later as well. But
Yes.
PIPPAMS is essentially just a smart assistant for your student journey at the end of the day. Like it's keeping you organized, it's keeping you consistent, and just always moving forward.
Right.
Um, Jahan, that brings me to my next question. Um, what does an internship with Ladder essentially look like? Um, what will I be doing as a student if I interned with a startup through Ladder internships? Because it seems very fancy that hey, I'm interning with the startup here, but what exactly am I doing?
Yeah, great question. I also really like that you said, non-stressful ways of us, doing the things that we have to do and build our
Right.
profile, because I think that's so important where we all sit and we're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's not the point. The point is to do the things that, of course, that doesn't mean that they're not challenging. That doesn't mean they don't require a little bit more of your thought and your time, but they don't have to be overwhelming. And they don't have to be bringing you down at the end of the day. They have to be raising you up, just like they're raising your profile up. So that's with all of this in mind is kind of how we structure our internship programs here at Ladder Internships. And yes, you are right. It sounds like, okay, I'm going to be interning with a startup, but what does that mean? Like, from a day-to-day perspective,
Right.
sometimes students are like, okay, so what do you expect of me? Like, I'm not, I've never worked with a startup before. What does that area even look like?
Right.
And it's honestly we make it as simple for the student as we can. We work with every student to understand their schedule. The way that it's structured is that you are working directly with the manager that you have at the startup. So this is likely going to be the founder of the startup, or a head of a department in the field that you have chosen, in the area that you want to build your profile in. This could be generic, it could be a general business or something, wide tech or something larger or something more specific. If you like medicine, if you like law, depending on what you might be, as we said, gravitating towards. And you're working directly with this manager week by week. So these are 8-week long internship programs, entirely virtual. So I actually see that we have people in the room from all around the world, which is awesome. So the program is completely virtual, and there's no requirement for you to relocate anywhere to do it. But you're engaging in this internship with your startup and your founder, your manager at the startup, and you're working week by week to complete a larger project with them. So it's a bite-sized project that the startup actually, has a need for, and you're working with them to help get this done, which means that you have structured meetings every day. You are given tasks that you have to get done. You're given feedback, mentorship, and you're guided through those tasks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, we want every student to have a completed project, a letter of recommendation from the manager that they can then use elsewhere in their college apps and anywhere, and for other future applications as well. Also, that mentor-mentee relationship that they established through the program. And then they've also, of course, got some learning through it. We also give them certificates from the startup, certifying that they did work for them for that period of time. So students actually get to develop their skills a little bit in the area that they're working in. So overall, what your internship really looks like is that it's a very structured experience where we help a ladder team basically is kind of your buddy throughout. We're involved throughout the process, where we make sure that the meetings are structured in a certain way, that you are given, the kind of time and the kind of feedback and the mentorship that you would need, and you are making progress and learning week by week over the 8-week period to complete this project at the end. That said, completely flexible, virtual, so completely, it's flexible. Students we understand a student's schedule, and we sort of, work with them. Because nowadays, actually, you would be able to tell me more than anyone else, I think, how busy students are nowadays, and, how much they have to fill their plates with so many things going on, and there's all this pressure of competition, etc. So just like you, coming back to, the sort of non-stressful ways, we want to make sure that this fits in along with everything else that the student must be doing and doesn't sort of add to the overwhelming stress that one might feel. But that said, actually, that's something that is making me think, and you might have some guidance here for the students in the room as well, and I'm curious to know as well, to share with students, is do you think that there's too much pressure on students, to stand out, to really, be someone different in the crowd, etc.? And how would you suggest that students maintain a balance between, you have academics, then you have outside of academics, extracurricular, recreation, things like that? So what are your some suggestions there about how they could balance this? And do you feel like there's a bit too much pressure right now on students to stand out?
So, Jahan, that's a loaded question, but of course, very, very necessary to answer, because people in the education business, of course, you and I are always, speaking about how enrichment essentially helps a student's journey. But
Oh, oh,
said about um,
we lost you for one quick
firstly
second.
being there as this.
1 second. Yeah, we just lost you for a second, but I think you're coming back now.
Yeah, Jahan, is that better?
Yes, we can hear you. Your audio is better. Camera's freezing up a little bit, video's freezing up a little bit, but the audio is better. So please
Okay,
continue.
lovely. Yeah. So, yeah, what you said about Ladder being there as a mediator between the company and the student, firstly, is really interesting to me. And it's very necessary in order to kind of maintain this balance, right? Because as you, as education providers or people who work in the education business, you do understand the pressure that a student also kind of goes through at the end of the day. So that's definitely interesting. Um, but yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of pressure on students to be exceptional at everything these days. Of course, I mean, with SI, I know that there's an entire cycle, right? There's grades, there's extracurriculars, there's the SAT, ACT, there's your internships, leadership, social impact. You're just doing a bunch of stuff. You can name it, and it's there. Now I want to stress here on students who might also, I mean, you guys are growing in the age of social media, so it can be a lot, right? You're seeing people do a lot. And while people like us also kind of go through those times like, oh, are we doing enough or not? But it's very, very important for you also to understand that balance looks different for everyone. But it starts with good time management and setting boundaries for yourself. It helps to be intentional with all your actions, what you're doing. Like Jahan said, we're not doing everything. We're going to be doing a very few things, but very well. Now, platforms like PIPPAMS can actually make it easier for you by just sending you notifications about what you need to do each day, for example, or looking at what activities actually require your time and justify your time at the end of the day. More than money, I think it's time that kind of comes in. um so at the end of the day, it's really important to kind of set your own boundaries and go for what you think you can sign up for. And it's not about doing everything at the end of the day. Even from the perspective of college admissions, I'm telling you, it's not about doing everything. It's about doing those very few things very, very well and consistently. I think that's something that we should all kind of take away and also reflect over. Just the volume of stuff we do nowadays, it just doesn't seem enough, no matter how much we do. So it's important to kind of pause, take a step back, and see if it's even worth your time. Now, Jahan, when I'm coming to the question of whether an activity being worth your time, I'm also wondering about the fact that Ladder is virtual, right? Wouldn't an in-person experience be better for students? Samudra, can you please unmute Jahan?
Thank you so
You muted her back. um, yeah, Jahan, you're
I
there.
think now it's working.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, cool. Thank you so much. So yeah, I actually I get what you're saying, in terms of like sometimes, especially parents in the room, might think that, oh, like I don't want what is virtual, like my students anyway, or my child's always in front of the computer or something, like that. The screen is getting a lot. I want them to get some in-person exposure, which is also great. There's definitely value in that. As Prithvi was saying, there are smaller, different things that you can do for in-person, the competitions, etc. Those involve some sort of in-person activity, which is great. But there are also certain things to acknowledge, like as we were saying, in the age of comparisons and social media and all going on, that you don't have. It's okay to find a way to manage your schedule with everything that's going on. And something virtual can actually be quite beneficial in that sense, especially when it comes to something like an internship, which very honestly, I'm sure you look at us, like, sitting in different parts of a country, having this conversation with people from around the world. The nature of work has become quite remote now, and it's become hybrid, if not remote. Of course, we do have the in-person interactions, etc. But what the virtual nature of our program does is bridges that gap. So we don't have to, spend the kind of enormous amounts of money and energy that we do to relocate to any specific region. Lots of the students sitting in a room trying to apply to the States might be like, oh, summer programs, etc., which is fine, but how much would you keep doing, right? You do a couple of summer programs, you can't keep going there for internships, etc. Versus in a program like Ladder, what we're trying to do is these startups which are based in the Bay Area, in the East Coast, in the UK, Europe, parts of Asia, no matter where you are, you can access them. It's the same access for anybody. For a student sitting in Dubai, for a student sitting in India, for a student sitting in the US, they can access the same kind of startups everywhere. So that's the idea that, even though, yes, it is virtual, and that doesn't mean that you're going physically to an office, you are still very much involved. That's fine. You can make sure that you can balance it with the other stuff happening, in your lives. And that's the idea with the virtual internship. So, and of course, always happy, I share my contact details here in the chat as well. Sometimes people have some specific questions about virtual versus in person for their own schedules, for their own preferences. So always happy to sort of elaborate that on that as well. But coming to sort of, you shared a lot about like how PIPPAMS is like I really like the idea of the daily notifications. Like I personally sometimes wake up with, I wish I got that. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I know what I need to get done, but how do I get there? Sometimes like having those smaller things in the larger goals would really help. But a little bit more like that, or in general, can you share, maybe what a typical student's experience might be, when they are using PIPPAMS, and how can they use it to enhance their own academic growth?
Jahan, firstly, thanks for that. I think it's really important to kind of also look at the pros of the virtual, right? And the fact
Yeah,
that everything now, I mean, since COVID has mostly been virtual, and we've kind of understood the benefits of the virtual landscape as well. And that's why
yeah,
we developed this tool as well, right? Because it helps you to just sit in one place and explore a bunch of different activities that there are. And dropping the link here in case anyone wants to sign up and check it out.
yeah.
We do have a free trial kind of a thing for this as well. But Jahan, I'd like to show you actually what it looks like. So this is the tab for individual students. If you're not, if your school isn't signed up with us, you can still sign up through Google or just on sign up. I already have an account, so I'm just going to log into it. But essentially, this is our dashboard. It has a bunch of different activities that are coming up, bunch of different tasks that are coming up, and also it shows you where you stand. The interesting part about this is, and this is something that Jahan would kind of agree with here, a lot of the activities have a very strict eligibility part of it, and Ladder is very kind to kind of allow students from all over the globe to participate in this. But a
Yeah.
lot of activities have these strict kind of rules about who can participate and who can't. Um, this is why we have this section in order to tell you what exactly you can tell the platform where exactly you're situated, what's your basic eligibility details here. And once you kind of select a subject that you want to do, you just essentially save it. And then you can see a bunch of tasks that come up, sorry, a bunch of activities that come up that you are eligible for. The system won't show you anything that you're not eligible for. And this is interesting because we can see a bunch of different activities with something called the cap value. It shows you how valuable an activity is for your profile. And here we see ladder, which is great. We see that the application is 23rd June, if I'm not wrong, Jahan, for the summer two cohort.
Yes, yes, yes. Summer two
Yeah,
cohort coming up. Yes.
love. And you have about a month to start, and the internship lasts for about a little less than a month, which is absolutely great. We have the cost written here, what kind of students should be doing this activity, and just general details about it. um and like that, you can just add it to your activity list, and once you have something added, you get notifications about it, so you know exactly what to do each day without feeling overwhelmed. It's like a little journal for your activities. Everything's already listed there. You just tick things off at the end of the day. Um, So yeah, guys, I do kind of encourage everyone to sign up and check it out. We do have a free version, so before kind of paying for it, I'd encourage all of you to check it out before that. Um,
Awesome. Yeah.
but yeah, Johan, so that kind of brings me to my next question to you. Um,
Yeah.
after completing an activity, right? Or perhaps in a more focused way, after completing an internship with Ladder, um, what are you left with, and how can a student use their internship in the future as well? What do you gain out of it?
Yeah, no, really, really good question. We'll definitely share more insight there. And really nice to sort of see the portal, and sort of how it helps you in that sense. Truly, truly a journal for students. And yes, of course, you can find, opportunities like Ladder there to see what they would do. And it does really matter what you're getting out of it at the end of the day. So I like that you have the scores, or sort of how it's adding to
Right,
you as a profile, like personalized, which is awesome. And it kind of ties into, of course, what you just asked me is like, what do you left with at the end? How can this help you in the future? How will this sort of augment what you already have going on?
right,
And with Ladder specifically, what we make sure is that, I mentioned that the students are working on an actual real world project with the startup. So the idea is at the end of the 8 weeks, they actually have a copy of this project to present on. We encourage all of the students to do the internship, to do, like a final presentation with the manager, with the company. And you can kind of have this deck as something that you use anywhere in your life. Tomorrow you're talking to somebody and you're telling them, hey, I did this internship with this startup, and they did it's a fintech app, let's say, for example, a trading app. Here's what I did, and you literally have a PDF because your deck can be, downloaded as a PDF, and you can show them. In other cases, and in addition to this, actually, you've gotten a personalized letter of recommendation from your manager that you've worked with. So if you find that when you're applying to your colleges, you really need another mentor, to write your recommendation letter, you need somebody else to sort of add to what you've done, to almost put an added stamp. And this is all personalized to you because you work one-on-one directly with this mentor. So it's like, hey, Krithvi did a great job asking me some wonderful questions at today's, session today. And so quite when anybody reads that, they're like, huh, okay. And these are not just anybody, right? These are individuals that any admissions counselor, anybody can actually Google and very clearly see. Like, oh, there's articles written about these people. They're in Forbes 30 under 30, whatever it is, whatever those, they're the Google, Microsoft ex-employees. They've, come from wonderful academic institutions like the Harvards and the Stanfords. Whatever their backgrounds might be, they come with a certain kind of backing that then backs you. And so students have really used this. We've noticed recently, in fact, we have some really exciting results coming in from the students who've got wonderful colleges by using this internship in their activity section, in their essays, their personal essays to colleges. Also, as I mentioned, as recommendation letters. So that's some of the tangible stuff, that the internship leaves you with. But of course, in addition to these very tangible outcomes, you also have the personalized growth that you're getting by doing this internship. So you're left with a greater sense of, I have some experience under my belt. I have some experience working with different people across the world, maybe even, I have that kind of exposure. You get to collaborate with peers. You have those, I actually still have some interns from like, two cohorts ago who are like very much almost friends now, and keeping that relationship going. And you start to learn, as I can't stress this enough, is that, oh, I really like these kind of things and I might want to pursue them further, or I really dislike these kind of things and I thought I would want to do this, but I really don't. And whatever it might be, you actually get to try different things. It's almost like when we try appetizers at a restaurant and then we have the main course. It's like an internship's a great way to try those things out and then move forward in your future, depending on what makes more sense for you. So that's, some of the stuff to answer your question in terms of like how one may be able to use these kind of internships and what you're actually left with at the end of the day.
right.
um but another thing that's coming to mind is, we've spoken a little bit about how much pressure students might feel nowadays to stand out, and like how they have to really kind of fill up their calendars. They feel that like that sometimes,
Mhm.
even though, of course, you and I are talking about the ways in which this does not need to feel something as overwhelming, and, it can be quite flexible and we can work around that. But sort of curious, now that you've kind of shown us PIPPAMS a little bit as well, Um, I'm sure there's some ways that you might be able to suggest when students sitting here in this room or even elsewhere might in general already be feeling a little bit inundated, with like, oh, I have so many academic activities, I have to do this in school, I have to do that in school, etc. How can a platform like PIPPAMS help students like that?
Right. Firstly, Jahan, thanks for sharing about the deliverables of the program. I think all of us in this room know how important letters of recommendations are for your college application. And more than anything, I think it's important to note that when we're getting letters of recommendations from someone, it's important to have interacted with them at a very high level,
Yeah.
which is why I think this is even more valuable because the student has already interacted with their mentor at each stage. uh,
Yes.
and that's why if you guys are going for ladder, definitely interact with your mentor, try to stand out so that they have the ability to write personalized letters of recommendations for you and your college apps by the end of the day. But coming back to the question you asked, Jahan, thanks for that, firstly. So of course, their schools are always on top of their game these days. They're already suggesting a bunch of different academic activities to you, and you might have a lot to do already. But it's not about adding more to your plate. It's
Yeah.
about helping you enhance what is already there. So the cap value that we just saw on the platform, first that can help us decide what is worth our time and what's not. And additionally, if you already have a lot on your plate, you can look for activities that can enhance your already existing achievements. So this is interesting because you might have a research paper already ready, but you might not have it published anywhere. You might not be competing with it at a global level. You can use PIPPAMS to find research journals or research conferences that can help you highlight your research paper.
Mm.
Similarly, you might have a social project ready. You're already working with an NGO, you're donating some stuff, you're working with animals, it can be whatever. Um, Use the tool to find social project awards that can help your social project be recognized, for example. Now, for example, you might have written an essay for school. You've written about ethics for AI, for example. I'm just giving an example. What you can do is you can look for essay-based competitions on the platform that can make use of your already written paper. So again, it's not about doing more, but doing what you do in a sustained and extensive manner. What you do from ninth to 12th grade is what matters at the end of the day. And Jahan, having experienced the international education landscape herself, can tell us this, that it's very important to have those activities that you're doing in a very sustained manner. It's not about 50 things, right? It's about doing one thing really, really well and really, really diligently at the end
Yeah.
of the day. Um,
Right.
so that Jahan, that leads me to my next question, I guess. When is also the best time to pursue an internship, right? Um, During the school year, there's already a lot going on, and I was just wondering, yeah, when should students pursue an internship? What about school and extracurricular activities?
You're it's a little bit in and out, but you're back now.
Okay, did you hear my question,
And
Jahan?
yes, yes, it was about when should students do internships, right? Now that we have, and as you were
Yes,
just saying,
yes,
as
yes.
school activities and all these other
Yeah.
things going on. So great question, and I like that we've kind of also in our conversation spoken a little bit about the importance of doing things very well and not thinking about how many things. It's quality over quantity,
Yes.
as we're talking about. And you are absolutely right. I've noticed, in my experience applying and then going and studying abroad and then working there, for a bunch of years. In general, it is a huge, huge value that you can add thing versus being out of okay. Time for you to do your internship is, of course, it's a personalized thing. Um, as we've seen in the portal PIPPAMS and even SI, works with the students on this, and even here at Ladder, is that every student does have a little bit of their own path, as you were rightfully saying, from the even sometimes younger, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, how you're spending your time and when you're doing things matters. I will definitely stress on this is that it is never too early to do an internship, especially with a program like Ladder Internships, where you have so much support, where you have so much sort of, middlemen working with you, making sure that it's structured according to your schedule. I always tell students that the sooner you start, the better. You can always come back and even do multiple internships, whether it's through Ladder, whether it's through some other organization, whether it's sometimes through the other sources we mentioned early, like maybe your own network or school connections. Starting early is a good way of using all these multiple different resources that you have for you to build your profile. Now, of course, if you are already like, wait, it's not early for me, I am sitting, I'm in the 10th grade, I'm in the 11th grade, I'm going to be applying soon, that's also perfectly okay. These are 8-week long internships. They are virtual. You can fit them in wherever you are in your schedule. We've had students literally do this internship while writing their applications because they were too last minute
Oh,
to, figure out, right, how they were like, oh, I haven't built my profile. And the counselors, as I'm so SI would be like, oh, we need to do something to add to your profile or sort of add to who you are. And so something like this can fit in quite well then. And we have, the good thing is, here at Ladder we have opportunities at several times in the year. It's not like you only can do an internship in the summer. You can do this either in the summer, in the fall, which is a September start. You can do a December start, or you can even do a March or spring start of the internship. So there are 5 different times at which you might be able to pursue this internship. We've had some students do it more than once as well. So depending on
okay.
every student, when both once in 1 year also with a different startup. So depending on every student's schedule, like there might be some students here who are looking for something for the summer, and Kritvi shared her screen and showed us Ladder is accepting applicants for the July cohort at the moment. It's pretty quick as well to just submit the form. That's what you need to do to meet the deadline. So you can see the opportunities for this July and, convert as soon as possible to an internship. Or in some cases, you might want to at least submit the application and see maybe if in December or maybe September, excuse me, you'd want to start the internship and figure out in your schedule what start date might work best for you. In fact, I'll just share, I'll keep this going, I'll share, I have right here in the chat, the website, the application form, my email as well. So even if I know we have a couple of minutes after we finished, for questions that might come up, but even if people have specific questions or they just want to save this information, I see I made a typo there. I meant to say, please feel to save this information, but get in touch with me via email as well for any specific questions there as well. Because I actually, I'm thinking of something else that I would love to ask Prithvi, and not go on about sort of the, internship opportunities here. Is that something that has come up? I mentioned, students should start early to try to fill as many, not just internships, research, other things that are happening in their lives, other, as we're talking about enrichment programs, etc. But there are also students are sometimes also like, oh, there are so many different platforms. So there's so many different programs. Like, how do I choose and how do I make my decisions?
Right.
So what would you say? We've spoken about PIPPAMS a little bit here, and you've shown us as well. What do you think makes PIPPAMS as a platform different from other ones, such as this Internshala, right? And other ones like just offering internships and other opportunities. So what would you say makes PIPPAMS different from those kind of platforms?
Right. I mean, that's a very interesting question because I mean, there are a lot of platforms out there now. I mean, edtech is booming at the moment. So
Yeah,
that's definitely there. And while Internchala is great, you should also kind of understand that it's usually for college students and it's more about work experience in a specific field.
yeah,
And like I think Jahan and I have both discussed before, Ladder is a very specialized program that essentially helps the company that you're interning at understand what you exactly need as a student. Platforms such as Internshala or perhaps even these other kind of activity providers out there might not understand that something needs to be particularly tailored to the needs of a high school student.
uh,
Um, so that's why it's particularly built for high school students, people such as you guys. It's not about only internships, it's about research projects, competitions, workshops, volunteering, etc.,
yeah,
etc. And Internshala, the difference essentially would be that you are going into Internshala with a pre-decided career path. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to explore. But PIPPAMS, on the other hand, just helps you explore a bunch of different things from a bunch of different perspectives. And Ladder is one of them. There are also a bunch of different programs that we have at PIPPAMS. So it doesn't just list opportunities, it helps you plan, track,
Yeah,
and essentially reflect on what you're doing at the end of the day, right? So what Internshala is like a job board, I would say in PIPPAMS is like a student roadmap, and Ladder kind of
yeah,
plays with that philosophy, I think, very greatly. It's
absolutely.
not about a
Yeah.
job board, it's about a student's trajectory. And I think that's where I'd like to kind of conclude and open the floor for questions. If we have any, you can unmute yourself or drop the chat box below, and Jahan and I'll take them one by one.
Sounds great. Um, Looking forward to the questions coming in and totally agree, sort of with what you were saying, this idea of the job boards, even in general, students are like, oh, I can just look at LinkedIn or something. It's very different because here as a student, you need the customized overall, we're talking about overall, well-rounded student application that you have to build. So programs like Ladder through platforms like PIPPAMS like really helps you do that
Right.
in a way that's a little bit better. But yeah, I did see one question come up in the chat earlier while people are thinking, which I can just quickly address is
Yeah, just
Shreyansh, you asked that do you have I don't have any extracurricular activities. Does this decrease your chances to get into an internship? Not at all. In fact, more so the reason you should do the internship, right? To sort of add to the extracurriculars, add to the activities that you might be having. We understand as a student, sometimes it's a chicken and the egg story, right? One goes to a place and they're like, oh, I want some experience. And the person's like, but where's all your experience? You're like, here I am looking for my experience. So that's that you give me the experience you're not going to get. And that's what Ladder wants to do. We want to give you those sort of initial opportunities to then use as a trampoline to get only further and further better information out there. So yes, totally eligible, and you are able to apply. I've sent the app form as well on the website. If you are interested, check out the details. If you have any other specific questions, you can always email me. I see another question come up. Are there opportunities available for gap year students? I think this is 100% true on PIPPAMS and with Ladder internships. We have a lot of opportunities for gap year students. And once again, I will stress on the fact that great time for you to be doing these kind of things to fill out your profile on PIPPAMS. You can actually see the different ways in which you can create the well-rounded profile, but even on with a program like Ladder, do internships, do one internship with a startup, even to really get something in your profile as you're sort of taking this year for whatever reasons that you might be, to then build your profile when it's time to be applying to your college or, taking the next step accordingly. So yes, opportunities for gap year students totally exist.
okay, lovely. Jahan, I actually had a question, and that's something I think maybe you and I can both answer.
Yeah,
But what if someone's in the 12th grade and they're going to be applying to uni in starting
yeah.
September? What can they do in a short period of time? Can they manage both? I mean, the ladder summer cohort we just saw is kind of the second one is still open. And
Yeah.
can students still manage their times with like filling out apps and stuff? Could you just give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, no, great question. And yes, it is a very nice last minute. Let me get this under my belt while I can, because I know sometimes students are like, oh no, I was too late. I should have done this. My application's falling a little short right now. Yes, the July cohort is a great opportunity. Your deadlines are coming up. In September, you might not be able to do the internship then. It might be a little bit overlapping with some of the deadlines as well that are coming up. So July is a good time to sort of wrap up these experiences to get that recommendation letter right in time, for your applications. So I know sometimes these portals actually have you send the link to your manager, to the person who needs to write the recommendation letter. It's a great opportunity for you to do this internship
Right.
and then, have these mentors write it. And in terms of time, which you were asking me,
Yeah.
it's very, very, we understand lots of students. I mentioned there was another student as well who was actually applying while doing the program. We just want that transparency. So the student would tell us sort of, what's going on in their personal personal lives, what other commitments they have, and we make sure that the manager is well informed. So everybody is kind of flexible in that sense. So we're doing the meetings. You're really spending, 5 to 10 hours a week in that case. You're not going to be, it's not a full time. It's not like you have to be 9 to 5 glued to your laptop. No, it's not meant to be overwhelming. It's supposed to be something that fits along with everything else happening in your schedule. So yes, of course, you do your SATs, you do your other applications, you do whatever your essays, you do your other profile building, even courses that you might find on PIPPAMS, and I'm sure you would have something to say about that as well. But you can definitely be doing that and still be doing this virtual internship alongside everything else happening to prepare for your application deadlines in the 12th grade as well. But kick it back to you for any more context, to your question about what a student could be doing. So
No, ladder is definitely an interesting one because, as Jahan said, they're super flexible on these things. One thing is one interesting kind of addition that I'd like to add on here. If students can do any kind of Olympiads during this time, it's really, really valuable. You don't have to prep for them. Just go and give as many as you can. That's like other is like Olympiads and examinations. So try to kind of do those in your spare time. They usually happen on Sundays. They take about 1 to 2 hours, and then you're free for the rest of the day. So just not a lot of time commitment there. And yeah, Jahan, just a couple of other questions coming
yeah.
up for you from Hosia first. What are the application
Yeah,
requirements
great
for
question.
ladder?
So basically the main things that we're looking for, just to reiterate the application process first, is the form that I sent over, and right after that form, you will be invited on an interview. At both these stages, we're looking for motivation, like what is the motivation behind why you are doing this internship, your attitude in general. Are you going to take the initiative to make the most out of this program? We are not looking for previous experience, so it's totally all right if you don't have that. Which is why you will see the form and even the interview questions if you get to that stage. They're asking you questions about yourself. They're asking you, why are you gravitating towards this field? Why do you want to do an internship? So it's really the ambition and the motivation behind you as a person. That is the main sort of requirements that, or the eligibility that we have. And in terms of any sort of additional materials, etc., we don't ask for that in the form. We only ask for your main demographic information, your basic schooling, which grade you are in, what areas you might be interested in. And then, as I mentioned, the paragraph questions about your overall motivation behind pursuing an internship. So those are sort of our requirements. And I think, Maria, that sort of answers your question as well, right, about specific qualities and experiences that we would expect. Not practical experiences, totally all right to not have. That said, of course, some of you are applying for a technical internship where you want to do something in the coding space, or you like AI or machine learning, or any of these topics that are now the hot topics of the season. Let us know where you stand. So in the application process itself, we would ask, once you say that you like AI or machine learning or any sort of tech, deep tech, whatever it is, then we would ask what your comfort level is with coding languages. Have you done anything in that space before? And then we would meet you where you're at in terms of your ability. So that would mean that the nature of your project would be something that would require the skills that you bring. And of course, if you haven't done any coding before, we would not be having you do a very coding heavy project at all. And what about internships in December? It's similar where, you can apply. Please check out the website that I sent over. It'll have all of the dates. If you have questions, you can also email me. My email address is up there. We do have these programs in December. It'll be on PIPPAMS as well for every cohort that comes up. So you can check out PIPPAMS to find Ladder. You can go to Ladder's website as well, and you can see what would make most sense for you. It's a similar thing where you apply on the form. You tell us what fields you might like, or as undecided as you want to be is also okay. And then in the interview steps, we would further dive deeper into your interests. Awesome. So how much value does the internship add to the CV for future job? I think this is something that in general, doing internships definitely adds a lot of value to your resumes, to your CVs, to your applications. You're actually able to, include what you did through an internship, what are the things that you worked on, what kind of startup you worked with, and help you as you're applying to job applications to be like, hey, I have this experience doing these kind of skills. These are sort of the key things that I learned, and I can apply them at whatever job you might be applying for next. So definitely doing internships is frankly, a very large value add to any sort of future job prospects. And yes, Sky, we do have financial aid. It's an entirely need-based financial aid. It is in the same form that you would use to apply for the program. If you need financial aid, you can just tell us that yes. There's a question that asks, do you need financial aid for the program? And you can say yes. And then it asks you a few other questions just to get sort of, the information there and the background. And then we would accordingly be considered for entirely need-based aid. We do not have merit-based aid at the moment. We only have need-based financial aid. I actually think that this next question might be for PIPPAMS and
Yeah.
SI actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. So what should be in the student's application if they want to commit it to UCL University or UPenn or Stanford? So I'd give you a bit of a brief, guys. So when it comes to US admissions, to do with a holistic development of a profile, which is where kind of programs such as Ladder and other programs kind of mentioned on PIPPAMS come in. There's a lot of kind of freedom to do a lot of different stuff, approach a particular subject from different perspectives. And while that's also there when it comes to UK admissions, it's a little bit less, I would say, Jahan. I think you'd agree with me as well when I say that. There's a lot of focus on like grades and showing a certain kind of a single trajectory in one academic discipline. So this is something that we say at SI as well. When you're applying to the US, it's about applying to a college, not a major. When you're applying to the UK, it's a lot about applying to the major. Um,
Yeah.
so um, uh, the way I'll answer your question is that, if Alua, if you're looking at just the UK, I'd say pick a subject, go to PIPPAMS, log in your subject there, and you'd see a bunch of different activities that are very well suited to that one particular academic subject. But if you're looking for the US and, building a more holistic profile, just do a bunch of different activities and a bunch of different subjects, and that's absolutely fine. What you're showing in the US is engagement. What you're showing in the UK is just commitment to one particular subject. Um, yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Was like an ultimate guide to achieve scholarship in the UK and US. So SI doesn't specialize with scholarships. I'll just put that out there firstly. But when it comes to US based scholarships, there are some big universities that allow you to automatically apply for a scholarship when you apply to the university itself. And a great example of this is the University of Southern California, based in California itself. So once you kind of put in your application by a certain kind of deadline, you're automatically considered for a bunch of different scholarships, and that's the kind of route that the US mostly takes. So again, while I'm not an expert in kind of answering this question, I would like to say that, when you're shortlisting universities at the end of the day, look at universities where an automatic kind of scholarship is possible. That would just mean you apply and you're automatically considered for a scholarship. That just means less work on your part, and a lot of prestigious universities do offer these opportunities. So do take advantage of them. Yes. Okay, lovely. I think that's it, Jahan. If anyone has any questions, after the webinar ends as well, Jahan and I will just drop in our email addresses here. Um, and you can write to us about a bunch of different questions that you may have. I know that sometimes questions don't pop up so suddenly. So if something else crops up, just send us an email. And yeah, Jahan, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's pretty. Oh, is another
Oh,
question? Just
another question.
last question, and then that'll be as so you made it just in time. Before we wrap, is there any other purpose for the internship apart from college? Yes, absolutely. This is a very and good point, Esther. Not just college apps, not just sort of your few further education, but even in general, doing internships through programs like this, and it's great. Somebody else in the chat had asked about future job prospects. It helps with that. It helps you just sometimes these internships can convert to longer term equations with the particular startup you're working with as well. So it's a longer term position, a longer term internship, even a full-time job if that's what you're looking for. Sometimes the mentor you're working with can just help you build your network. This is something that I think Prithvi and I both, and most of the adults in the room, I should say, would feel is that your network sort of gets you everywhere in life, and it is what you would build by doing something like an internship, because you get that exposure to different people outside of your immediate circles and outside your immediate geographical locations even. So yes, as to lots of other purposes and benefits to doing an internship in addition to college applications.
Yeah, just building your overall profile as well, just the confidence to get out there. And like
Yeah.
rightly Jahan said that, it's all about networking now. Because with the technical age, what is happening is that everyone's applying for everything all the time, right? There's just so
Yeah.
much of overload of applications as well when it comes to the college application or the job application or whatever that may be. An
Yes.
internship just sets you up for networking, and I think that's what's most valuable. And these skills last you a lifetime. They still kind of helped me with my daily life, even when I did my internships about 12 years back.
Agree.
So these
Yeah.
are very, very important skills. And definitely, thank you so much for joining. If you guys have any other questions, let us know. If you need a recording of the webinar, please email us. We'll get back to you. Um, so that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, Jahan. Another year. Hopefully,
Yes.
we'll be back next year.
We will, and hopefully back with some other more creative things, some fun ideas popped up while we were having this conversation. So we'll share with the students and with each other, we'll come up. But thank you so much, Prithvi, and the entire SI team for everything. This has been great. And we will be, of course, thank you, Rajni. I was actually just going to say that form is something I was just looking for that, because we have an SI education and ladder internship student application form. It's even better if you are interested, if you use this particular form to apply, just because it frankly is more premium form to use for our purposes. So definitely go ahead and do that. And thank you again, everybody who's attended, and for all this time and your questions, and really appreciate all your questions, Prithvi, as well. This has been great.
Thanks, Jahan. Back at you. Yeah. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
awesome. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.